Hello, Void. How are you doing today? Baby Rizzo, back once more, and, well, considering a lot of the old school Universal movies I've been watching, really it was only a matter of time before I broke out Dracula. Now, I've seen several versions of Dracula up until now, but this is really the first time I actually sat down and watched the Universal one. And watching it, it had felt like I had already seen it with how famous it is, and how, well, parodied it is, and just in general how iconic it is. So, how was it? It was alright. Now, that said, it's largely probably due to oversaturation that, well, Dracula finally doesn't really pull in some of the intensity that some of the other movies did. I mean, even Frankenstein, despite being beat for beat, still had enough elements of it that weren't overdone. Now, for Dracula, you could tell pretty much exactly everything from how done the story has been. And while this one definitely did it first, at least until the telling of Dracula, I know there were some silent ones that were technically before it does it very well. So that's just more of a personal quibble. Now, Bela Lugosi, amazing. Of course he is. He handles the role very well with a degree of elegance. I just actually could have used a little bit more of him, believe it or not. Now, that is kind of the main problem I have with Dracula. This movie is only about an hour and 15 minutes. I wanted more. I mean, they streamline quite a bit, and it happens very fast. So, that's the only really problem that I'm having with this one is it tries to condense everything into such a short amount of time, it goes at a breakneck pace. So, while some of the other movies were short, they still didn't feel like they were rushing. Now, that could be because I've actually taken the time to read Dracula, that I realized how much was completely missing. I mean, I understand some condensing will have to happen, and several characters were missing or altered to fit some of the narrative. Heck, when I talked about Frankenstein, they changed his name. But this one, you feel it really in the pacing. Particularly with the vampire Lucy, for example. Now, most people are familiar with the story of Dracula. Now, I will say the Coppola version, while it goes way off the rails towards the end, was pretty faithful up until that point. So that one does a decent job, at least from the outset of the novel. This one, it changes quite a bit right off the bat. First off, Renfield plays a significantly bigger role. I mean, in the book, he's already in the asylum at the beginning, and they just mostly cut back to him eating things, and occasionally they need to interview him. This one, he's pretty much takes over the role of Harker as the person who brings Dracula to London, and then proceeds to keep breaking out and making scenes. And I will say the actor that plays Renfield in this is kind of amazing. His crazy eyes do really work, and his acting is solid, and just the laughing is it's brilliant. So, there's still a lot to like in this movie. Do not get me wrong. I did not. And then I definitely still enjoyed it. But problem I have with this one is, well, the novel, when in Transylvania, Dracula pretty much brings Harker over there to learn as much as he can before he goes to London, and then leaves Harker there. In this one, and that takes place over a couple weeks. This one, Renfield arrives and is told, "We're leaving tomorrow. Let's go." Okay, that's fine. That's really, so it pretty much condenses all the creepy things of realizing something's off of Dracula into about a night, but that's fine. I didn't really have a problem with that condensation, and that makes sense for trying to fit into the movie. the problem I have starts when he starts attacking other people in London. So pretty much the way it goes is he, at an opera or show, catches sight of both Mina and Lucy, and pretty much first attacks Lucy, turns her into a vampire, then proceeds to try to seduce Mina into becoming his bride. So all that does happen, but, well, for Lucy, you see him sneak into her room once, bite her, and then the next scene she's dead. Boom. I mean, other adaptations, you see her growing slowly weaker and then finally passes away through a mysterious cause. Or they realize something's wrong, but they can't do anything to stop it. This one, it's... And then they, in other editions, book included, Lucy begins going out and stalking, luring people away, and biting them herself. They talk about that happening here, but they don't actually show much of it. They really don't show it at all. They just start talking about a woman in white that matches Lucy's description and indicate that Mina also saw her once, but they never actually show her. And they don't show them putting her down, which happens in most other ones. It's like she was pretty much trimmed for time, which is a shame. And pretty much at that point, Van Helsing's called in, and he's like, vampire. Right off the bat. It's, I mean, in the novel he did figure it out pretty quickly, but this one they go to calling him, like, immediately. Also, they kind of did a bit of a change up on the cast, and this I don't have too much of a problem with because these adaptations switch things up all the time, so this is not a complaint, it's just an observation. So, the main cast, we usually got John Harker and his fiancée Mina. Okay, cool, fine. And now, then Lucy and her fiancé, which is, Quincy, I think. I can't quite remember his name. But, he an American cowboy. He's not in it. And Dr. Seward, who, it's been a long time since I've read the novel now. He was he was romantically involved with either Mina or Lucy, but was pretty much spurned. I can't quite remember who. I think it was with Lucy, and was just trying to avenge her. But in this one, he's Mina's father. They just age up Dr. Seward. That I didn't really have a problem with. It takes out some of the complications for trying to shorten the novel to this size, but it's just an observation. But yes. Then they pretty much, the novelization was tracking down where Dracula was operating out of, and where his coffin was hidden was a big to-do. This one, they just follow Renfield. And there you go. I don't really remember how they completely tracked him down beforehand, but it was a lot more involved. So the performances in this are very good. Then the atmosphere, well done. Now, notably, this was very early on in the Talkies movie. The first spoken movie was in 1927, I believe. This was 1931. And one thing noted is there's pretty much no music in it other than a little bit blurb at the beginning. Now, I understood reading the back of this that there was a version with a score that was later added, but I decided to just watch it straight up because I mistakenly thought there was a score and that was a replacement one. Not so. There wasn't one at all. It's pretty much a very quiet movie, which actually does lend something to the atmosphere. Also, one thing I noted was that in this one it's wolfsbane that's actually keeping Dracula away and not garlic. I'm pretty sure in the novel it was garlic, but again, I could be wrong. So I think they're just trying to make something a little less silly sounding than garlic, perhaps, or something a little bit more established. Otherwise, interesting choice. Now, where I'm putting this one on MacGuffins is kind of tricky because the performances, like I said, were stellar. It just felt too rushed and too short. So the best I can really give this one is only a 3 MacGuffin. Dracula itself does deserve better than that, but and its version is definitely worth seeing because it definitely establishes a lot of the tropes, I guess, in vampire filmmaking. But it was just kind of held back by its shorter running time, condensing a lot more. Now, at the same time, they made a Spanish version of Dracula. It was pretty much filmed at the same time, just using Spanish actors, and it's a Spanish spoken film. Now, that one is 1 hour and 44 minutes. So I'm wondering if they actually took some time and did a bit more with that one. So I'm curious there. I'm going to watch that one at some point. So I'll kind of do a little bit of a comparison there. But otherwise, definitely worth seeing. But I just wish they took their time a bit more. All right. Have a good night, everybody.